Welcome to the drop-in session. This is our third session in a series of follow-up events following the security conference. This is to help increase your security posture through our resilience services. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you could please put yourself on mute and place any questions you have during the session in the chat. We'll get back to them as we go along. Right, I'll just start by sharing my screen. Cool. Well, welcome this morning. As we just mentioned before, it's the Increased Resilience Services session. As your security partner, we tailor our services to meet the sector's needs. In this session, we'll be covering the following resilience services. So we'll be going through Foundation Plus, DDoS mitigation, critical service protection, which will be covered by Claire Stonebridge, our managed and co-managed firewall service, which will be covered by Jasmine Reed, and then the security cyber threat monitoring service and our new security center proof of concept will be covered by Steve Howard. So I'll start by handing over to Claire Stonebridge.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Claire Stonebridge. I'm a Network Security Services Manager. So I manage a number of services. The Critical Services Protection and the Foundation Plus is the ones I'm talking about today. Next slide, please. So before we talk about these optional services, I thought it would be worth just refreshing everyone's memory on the Foundation DDoS mitigation service. This is something that just provides a standard to everyone that has a Janet connection. And with that, Jisc will manually mitigate any attack against your Janet network connection during business hours. Obviously, that means that it will be manually mitigated. And so you don't have the 24/7 protection. And that's made me think that, well, what do we do if we need 24/7 protection? And this is the newer services that we've developed over the last few years. Next slide, please. So our optional automated DDoS mitigation services are Foundation Plus, and this is the optional automated protection for your Janet network connection 24/7, and Critical Service Protection. This is optional automated protection for your business critical services on Janet 24/7. This could include DNS or web, to name a few. Next slide, please. Services, I thought it would be useful to share a matrix. This is also available on our service pages. Just to give you an idea of what you get with each of these services. So with Foundation DDoS mitigation, obviously you can protect your Janet network from DDoS attacks, and you also get that with Foundation Plus. If you're looking to protect your services from DDoS attacks, then you're looking for Critical Services Protection. Both Foundation Plus and Critical Service Protection have the 24/7 protection capability and the automated protection with fast response times. If you're looking for permanent mitigation of your chosen services, then this is something we can provide through Critical Services Protection. And also we will provide a bespoke proposal, which also assists with stakeholder buy-in with Critical Services Protection. Next slide, please. So just to cover the services in a bit more detail. So what is Foundation Plus? We also term it FP, just in case I'm using that without thinking about it. Foundation Plus is an optional service which enhances the coverage provided by the Foundation DDoS mitigation service you get with your Janet connection. You get that extra peace of mind as it protects you 24/7 against automated volumetric and state exhaustion DDoS attacks on the Janet network. Next slide, please. I thought it'd be useful just to do a quick overview of how the protection works. I'm not sure how easy it is for everyone to see this on their screens, but at the top we've got the attack traffic in red, and it indicates what happens when there are attacks. So going from left to right, you've got the attack traffic coming into the Janet Edge router that goes into our NetFlow collector. And then if there's a bad traffic, then it exceeds the threshold, alerts are generated, And in the case of Foundation DDoS mitigation, an analyst would redirect that traffic. When you have Foundation Plus, this automatically is mitigated. So you haven't got to worry about manual intervention on this one. And then in the scrubbing center, the countermeasures are applied and malicious traffic is dropped. Otherwise, if it's legitimate, it just goes straight through and you see no issues with your traffic. Next slide, please. So onboarding for Foundation Plus, it's very simple. Essentially, we just issue a quotation on receipt of your purchase order. We will enable the system to automatically mitigate any high alerts it detects against your network. This does not require any changes to your network. And you also have the option to include out-of-hours notifications so you can take necessary actions. Obviously, everything will be mitigated automatically, but sometimes you just need that peace of mind that things have been triggered and everything is protected, so you can opt for those out-of-hours notifications. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of Foundation Plus? So Foundation Plus, it provides automated network protection throughout the business day and after business hours, so that includes the weekends. And thereby you're protecting your reputation and can maintain business continuity by further protecting your Janet network connection at key times of the year. This could be at clearing, enrollment, or at peak operating months. Next slide, please. So the next service I'm talking about is critical services protection. As I said earlier, this is an optional enhancement to protect business critical services 24/7. It does provide out-of-hours coverage with automated protection of critical externally facing services hosted on Janet. So the difference between the two that I've mentioned is Foundation Plus protects your network connection. Critical services protection protects critically externally facing services that are hosted on Janet. Next slide, please. And in the same vein as I've talked about the Foundation Plus, here is a diagram that explains the critical services protection. Again, we've got the the attacker, sorry, at the top, and it all goes through the edge router into the NetFlow connector. The only difference here is that we can have pre-configured profiles for CSP or critical services protection. These are either VPN, DNS, web, SIP, or ADFS, and these could also potentially be bespoke as well. So what happens, the traffic comes through, if it's bad traffic, then there's set rules that we've configured with the pre-configured options, and it will only permit traffic from certain ports and protocols. And then it gets to the scrubbing center, and then the mitigation countermeasures are enabled. Obviously, if you've got good traffic, it bypasses all that and comes out the other end, and users can continue using the services as normal. Next slide, please. So in terms of what critical services protection offers, as I said, we offer these pre-configured profiles. So just again to remind you, it's ADFS, DNS, SIP, VPN, and web. Or we also have bespoke profiles that could be firewalls, or it could be that you've got certain services that perhaps wouldn't necessarily fit within our pre-configured setup, and we can obviously tailor those to your requirements. I've mentioned briefly earlier about the different response times. So we have a fast response. This is about a 4-minute delay because alerts are triggered before the mitigation starts, and that makes it a bit more cost effective. But if you want permanent mitigation, then that's that instant option. And that means that the mitigation is permanent or always on, and you have no delay in mitigation. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of critical services protection? So these services are automated and they react 24/7. So it helps you prevent disruption to critical services from out-of-hours attacks. And then by protecting critical services such as web and VPN at key times of the year for clearing, enrollment, or during peak operating months, you have that protection when you need it. And also because you're protecting services, you can protect against DNS floods or service targeted attacks. Also, the main thing really with the service is that you can protect your reputation by maintaining the availability of your systems. Next slide, please. So in terms of the onboarding for critical services protection, this is a little bit more involved because we have to ensure that when we have discussions, we need a mandatory assessment call. This is to ensure that we have the right requirements, we assess your technical restrictions, any budget constraints, and everything so that we can make sure that we tailor the package accordingly. We then send a quotation and there's a proposal which is created with our analysts in mind, and they look at the discussions we've had during the call and make recommendations based on what we discussed. Then from there on, we would accept the order through a purchase order system, and then we would implement the mitigation. And when we implement the mitigation, we wouldn't implement it straight away. We would again require another call to do some testing, just because these services are obviously live and we don't want to cause any disruption. And then if everyone's happy, we can either set the services to remain live at that point in time, or you could opt for out of hours installation. Next slide, please. And just briefly, the contract options. This is a chargeable service. So Foundation Plus, that's available on an opt-in basis via an annually recurring contract. And Critical Services Protection, again, also available on an opt-in basis. We have a 4-month option, which is ideal if you want to protect for clearing enrolment. Or we also have annually recurring contracts. And with these annually recurring contracts, you have flexible options so you can swap services to a certain degree when needed. And the main thing that we've done more recently is to save you money and ensuring continuous protection. We also provide multi-year discounted options for both services. So you get a 5% discount for 2 years and an 8% discount for 3 years when paid for upfront. Next slide, please. And just in terms of support and alerting, so Jisc CSERT support is currently available during working hours and on-call out of hours for all DDoS mitigation services. You've also got the cybersecurity portal where you can see DDoS alerts and mitigations, and the link is on there. And in future, we're hoping that in line with the new security centre model, we're looking to move to 24/7 on-call support for both these critical services protection and Foundation Plus. Next slide, please. And so a quick summary really of what we talked about. So in terms of what you can get, so to protect your network against distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks, you can do that with the 3 easy steps. Next slide, please. So step 1 is Foundation DDoS. As it says, it protects your Janet network during normal business hours with an on-call out-of-hours service. This comes with your connection. Step 2, this basically provides you with around-the-clock automated protection for your network connection with enhanced network protection. So it just basically enhances what you get with the Foundation service. And step 3 is the critical services protection. This is that customisable option where you can protect your business critical service around the clock at key times of the year. And obviously you can go for all year round mitigation as well. Next slide, please. And just some information here. So there's some QR codes with links or information on the service pages. And for any pricing or to arrange an assessment call, please contact your relationship manager or you can email my team direct. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Just like to introduce Jasmine Reed as who will walk you through their managed and co-managed firewall service.
Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, I'm Jasmine. I'm the service manager for Jisc's managed firewall service, and we provide this in partnership with Kipu. This is a relatively new offering in Jisc's security portfolio. It was launched halfway through 2022, and the service came about really because we're aware of some of the issues that our members and customers can face around firewall management, and so we know just how important it is to be one step ahead of things from a security perspective. Next slide, please, Paul. So in providing this service, we've really brought together the key strengths of 2 organisations. Jisc, obviously, as the sector's trusted security partner and provider of the Janet network, and in partnership with Kipu, who are a proven managed security service provider who've been providing managed firewall services for many years. KIPU are CE certified and are audited by Palo Alto, which really ensures that they're providing the level of service that meets Palo Alto's own standards. So although this may be a newer service for us here at Jisc, the underlying elements of this service are very much tried and tested. Ultimately, I mean, this actually started out as a fully managed service, and we didn't have a co-managed option. But after working with our early adopters, it was clear that we needed to provide a variety of services to accommodate different setups across organisations that vary in scale and complexity. So we now have a range of firewalls available, and we will work with you to find the right solution to fit your organisation's needs. And we do this through early calls, a series of technical consultations and scoping calls with yourselves, Jisc and KIPU. So effectively, these services are either fully managed or co-managed. So with a fully managed service, it's exactly what it says on the tin. The day-to-day maintenance of the firewall is managed for you. Updates and patches are rolled out automatically, and there's no access for at the customer end, at the organisational end, to make changes to that firewall configuration. The firewall interface can be viewed in read-only mode, and any changes can be requested via a change request, which would be sent through to the Jisc service desk, and then onward to KIPU's engineers to implement those changes in discussion with you within your organisation. And we've spoken to many of our members and customers who prefer the idea of that fully managed service due to the peace of mind that it can offer, really, and having that second pair of eyes to audit any changes to security rule sets. The difference with the co-managed approach is that the organisations would have a named login account to the firewall interface with admin access, which would enable you to make certain changes yourselves. And some people prefer this flexibility as it can allow, changes to be made in the moment if and when that need arises. The main difference here is that with a fully managed service, the responsibility for the security of the firewall remains pretty squarely with the managed service provider. But with the co-managed approach, you retain the ability to make changes, so you have more control. But with that, obviously, comes an element of shared responsibility. There's always a potential of making a change that could compromise security. Everything is still logged with regular reviews of rule sets to be carried out and just monitoring the overall security. And each option, no matter which option is chosen, it's fully supported 24/7, 365 days of the year, meaning that help is available around the clock when it's needed. And any changes can be carried out by specialist engineers at any time of the day or night. The service is aimed at all education and related sectors, sort of essentially anybody with a Janet connection can benefit from using this. It's been designed considering the demographics of the education sector, accounting for the bring your own devices and so on. So the approach here has been to purposely design this around who we know our members and customers are. This can be hardware, it can be virtual. It can be deployed at the traditional internet gateway where Janet links terminate. It can be put in the cloud. There are various service elements that can be added to your configuration, and I'll cover that in a little bit. But in terms of technology, the hardware uses best of breed, enterprise grade, next generation Palo Alto firewalls, which are remotely managed via a centralized platform. Palo Alto have a security portfolio that doesn't just kind of address that gateway firewall that on-premise, it's in the cloud and with remote users as well. So they do have solutions that will fit different requirements and different organisational challenges across sites. The hardware portfolio features a wide range of products, actually, from a fairly basic 1 gig copper solution up to a 25 gig fibre model. And as I say, we've got virtual firewall options as well for cloud environments. So throughout all of this, gold standard practice is applied throughout. Next slide, please, Paul. So very much in a defend as one. Jisc's mantra here is that the first organisation really to suffer an attack should be the last. And with the Janet connected community, Jisc and the way that the network is monitored, Jisc kind of really uniquely positioned to support this. We use insights drawn from across the Janet network to quickly mitigate threats. So this service not only utilises threat feeds from Palo Alto and Kipu, but also our own incident response and threat intel teams at Jisc. The managed firewall logs feed into Jisc's SIEM service to enhance security. It will integrate with the security center as well, so sharing information across all our security teams for a really joined up approach. So the idea is that the community-based approach benefit across sectors will benefit everybody. Next slide, please, Paul. So why a managed firewall solution? I mean, there are a number of benefits to having a managed firewall. Firstly, reducing the management burden overall in your organisations of maintaining complex firewall configurations. You know, it can be a difficult thing to keep on top of when it comes to patching and updates, particularly if your IT teams are stretched or under pressure. Firewall expertise, keeping on top of relevant industry training can be challenging, costly, it can be quite difficult to retain. And there have been cyber attack incidents where firewall basic maintenance just hadn't been implemented. You know, IT administrators can often be tasked with making changes now because something's required really urgently. And, you know, that's always going to be the case. But the question here is really whether the necessary best practice checks are being made ahead of making that change. And having that fully or co-managed solution will really ensure that these changes are made safely. So Kipu and Jisc together try to work as an extension of your own organisations, working alongside your own teams. So we'll get a feel for when your preferred change window is, what your preferred way of working is, so that we really kind of offer a complementary working pattern. And by drawing on that community-based approach that I mentioned earlier, we can ensure that wide-ranging threat intelligence is applied throughout. So this solution provides a community-based approach that's really tailored for your organisation. Obviously, having fixed costs for your firewall can also be a real benefit because it can help reduce your overall resource overheads. Having a solution in place that you know is managed can free up your IT teams to work in other areas, you know, allowing them to step away from the kind of day-to-day mundane tasks of your firewall, and be able to work proactively on other things, you know, providing other services for your student base, your teaching staff and so on. And the firewall can produce reports for auditing and for things like Ofsted. We've recently pulled out specifically tailored reporting for an Ofsted inspection for one of our members using the firewall solution. So these can be really tailored to your needs, and all of that would be discussed at those implementation consultation stages early on. Slide, please. So these are a list of the kind of core, the most common core mitigation packages. So the service comes complete with a list of enhancements as part of the standard package, which is what's here. And it's just kind of worth mentioning that, you know, customers would be protected by Jisc's JNRS service for their DNS traffic, obviously, if they've signed up to that, because that's part of your membership. And again, it's worth noting that you've got those reporting and auditing features, which kind of help overall with your security posture. Next slide, please, Paul. There are a number of extra chargeable packages, which you can see here. It's just a handful of them, just to give you an overview of what they may be. They are under review as the service develops. There will be more features that will be introduced in the future. And the suitability of these kind of additional packages would be discussed with you during a technical consultation call with Jisc and Kipu, just to kind of go into what they are and how they might suit your organisation. Next slide, please. So just an overview really of service levels and how this all works when it's put together. So in terms of these service level agreements that we have, we've got a very quick turnaround for change requests. So we're looking really at an hour acknowledgement with a 2-hour response time for standard and normal changes. Emergency changes, obviously, you know, we would be dealing with that in the moment, and it would be dealt with in an ASAP situation, and the team would pick that up. And it's worth kind of just saying that these are a worst case scenario SLAs. Obviously, things come through, we pick it up and action things as swiftly as possible. It's quite a generous allowance allocation of change requests. So this should be more than enough to suit needs, and this applies to both the managed and the co-managed package. So I think that's a nice overview. I'll probably leave this there and be happy to answer any questions at the end that you may have. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Jasmine. And can I hand over to Steve Howard, please, who will take us through Cybersecurity Threat Monitoring Service.
Thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve. I'm the head of product for cyber at Jisc, and I'm here to talk to you around CSTM, cybersecurity threat monitoring, and onwards towards our security centre. Next slide, please, Paul. So, cybersecurity threat monitoring, also known as CSTM. What is it? It's a SIEM platform, but the important part of our offering is the service wrap around it. So basically, we ingest data from all your critical infrastructure into the platform. It's constantly correlating all that data, looking for signs of threat activity across multiple sources, and where required, where threat activity has been detected, it raises alerts. We have our own Jisc security analysts working here with us, who will respond to those alerts, triage them, make sure they're not a false positive, for example, and if they do indicate signs of threat activity, they will notify you accordingly, along with suitable mitigation and remediation actions. So you can consider the service as almost like a fit and forget if required. You know, once the service is live, you've got the confidence that should anything be detected across your infrastructure, our analysts are there to respond to the alert and notify you accordingly as required. On the flip side of that, you do have access to the member portal, as we call it. It's a single pane of glass, like a dashboard, that's available for you at any time to log into to check your security posture. It's available for you can flip back anytime from the current time, anytime in the previous 30 days, if you just want to check, did anything untoward happen over the weekend? But obviously, if something did happen over the weekend, you'd have already known about it due to our analysts getting in touch at the time. I already mentioned how it correlates events from multiple sources. An important part of the platform is the risk-based alerting that it uses. So what that means in English is devices across your infrastructure are allocated a risk level. So as part of the onboarding, we work with yourselves to understand what are your critical assets, i.e. your domain controllers, so your any external facing servers, in terms of assets, and in terms of identities, you know, what are your domain admin accounts, the names of any privileged groups, things like that. And those items are then associated a risk level according to how important they are. And that's how the platform works. You know, you could have a student with a misconfigured BYOD device that's constantly polling a system with the wrong password. Legacy systems may flag that up as an attempt at hacking, but the way this system works is the risk level of that student and that unknown device is set accordingly low, so it won't generate, you know, a severe alert. On the flip side, if you've got a domain admin account that is constantly polling AD with the wrong credentials, and then even worse, it succeeds because I've either guessed it or brute forced it. You know, the risk level assigned with both those actions is much higher, so a much more urgent alert will be generated and you'll be notified accordingly. The platform is built on Splunk Cloud, which some of you may be aware of. The underlying brains of the product is Splunk's enterprise security product. However, the actual CSTM product, although it's based on that, has been built from the ground up by Jisc in partnership with Splunk themselves, specifically for the needs of the sector. You know, it's not a does anything for anyone commercial offering. It is a threat monitoring and alerting system specifically for our members. There's a standard set of use cases from launch that detect all the classic signs of threat actors and threat activity. It's important to note that is never a static list. You know, threat actors are constantly changing their techniques and their evil ways. So we have to keep on top of that, and we're adding new use cases all the time. So yeah, absolutely. And finally, the going back to the fit and forget model, you'll still receive an automated email once a month with an overview of everything that's been detected across your network, and any actions taken as a result of that by ourselves. Next slide, please, Paul. Just to summarise what I've covered there, you know, the system is monitored by humans at Jisc, who are responding to alerts, triaging them, and then notifying you accordingly. 24/7 coverage is provided in terms of what's known as critical urgency alerts. You know, malware outbreak that's out of control, things like that. Not only will you receive an automated notification of that alert, but you'll also receive a phone call from a Jisc security analyst to ensure that you are fully aware of the alert and the severity of it, and you're as I say, you're aware of it. As part of that, anything critical is automatically notified to our CSIRT, our incident response team. So they'll be on hand to assist you as and when required. One other thing to mention on this particular slide, the system is fully UK based. Data sovereignty is becoming more of a pressing issue amongst, you know, all industries. So all the data that's collected and stored on the platform remains in the UK. One other thing to mention is the guided onboarding we provide for the service. Onboarding is not a trivial task, but we are there to guide you and work with you all the way through your onboarding journey. An important part of that is pretty much any of the commercial SIEM vendors do not provide that service, certainly not free. They'll sell you the SIEM product, but getting it installed can turn out to be quite expensive if you need to engage their own experts in terms of professional service days. We offer all that as part of the one fixed price for the service. I think that's Paul on that one. Next slide, please. And now we move on to our security centre. And I'm just going to talk to you about where we are, what the offer looks like, and next steps really. So there you can see a high level overview of the threat landscape this year. You can see the red box there, lack of monitoring. That's what we hope to address here for our members. Next slide, please, Paul. So in terms of the security centre, it's built on good foundations. What you can see on the screen at the moment are all the cybersecurity services that are included as part of your Jisc membership. Claire's already mentioned around DDoS protection. The foundation DDoS is provided as part of your Jisc membership. DNS is mentioned there. That's primary name server and also a secondary name server service. So, you know, we can host your DNS for you on our secure DNS platform. You've got access to our CCERT, our incident response team, on an 8x5 basis, i.e. 8 working hours, Monday to Friday. You've got access to our threat intelligence, CTI, and finally, we've got our protective DNS service there, JNRS. Strongly recommend you sign up for that if you don't already use it. It's already proved its worth in terms of mitigating the paper cut exploit earlier this year. Anyone on JNRS would not be affected should someone try to infiltrate the paper cut via phishing emails. If anyone clicked on that, JNRS stopped access to that domain and the attempt was thwarted. Next slide, please, Paul. So as we move into a security center, you can see there, as it kind of explains, we're talking about tier 1 here. We're going to offer, the proposal is to offer 2 tiers of 2 levels of service in terms of the actual service offering. We'll talk about tier 1 briefly. You can see if we work from the bottom up, CCERT then increases to CCERT Plus. That's also indicated by the blue pillar on the left in terms of 24/7 incident response. That means CCERT, our incident response team, are available 24/7, 365 days a year to assist with any security breaches across your estate. Moving up one line, we've got SIEM. What that actually means is our CSTM platform that I've already been through on the previous slides. That SIEM is the foundation, the golden source of everything we do in the security center. It ingests all the logs from across your estate, it ingests EDR data, and it's constantly correlating all that data for signs of breach or threat activity. Moving up one level, you can see the DDoS protection moves up to the Foundation Plus level that Claire's talked about. So you know you've got the quicker response on that. And then finally, the other key part of the security center is the MDR, also known as EDR or maybe even XDR. Every vendor likes to have a different acronym. Essentially, that's the agent that sits on your servers. That's there to help us detect threat activity, to mitigate threat activity. In terms of the security center, the important part of the MDR is that enables us two-way communication into your network. So should the SIEM, the CSTM, detect signs of threat activity, so for example, a compromised account, using that MDR tooling, we will be able to disable that account, for example, or should a machine be compromised, you know, we can use that tooling to quarantine that machine from the rest of the network. On that note, on the right hand green pillar there, you can see SOAR. SOAR is our automation service. So a lot of as in the examples I've just explained there, you know, compromised account, compromised domain account, or compromised machine, they can be mitigated via using automation. So the whole security center, you know, the SIEM picks up the activity. It knows it's a compromised account. The automation then talks to the MDR solution. And that account can be closed down until such time someone inside your network, one of your IT people, can actually get on site or access remotely and remediate that particular account, for example. It's important to realise though that we are heavily investing in automation for these simpler tasks. It's important to note though that we're not wholly reliant on automation. You know, there's always going to be new styles of threat activity, and that's why our incident response people are there. They're monitoring it. They can then use the MDR and also the SOAR tooling to respond accordingly, mitigate and hopefully remediate the problem without you having to actually do anything at all. And that's the basic modelling of tier 1. Just on that MDR part there. Initially, we are going to support 2 MDR products. You can see the logos down there on that slide. So in Microsoft Defender and also CrowdStrike. We've chosen those. Defender's very, very common across our membership, already deployed. CrowdStrike is used by our incident response team in terms of when they respond to a threat activity currently. Both those tooling we as Jisc have great knowledge and confidence in, hence we're sticking with those right now. Next slide please, Paul. And then we move into tier 2. You can see in the yellow there, we've extended the MDR solution to cover all your endpoints. Previously in tier 1, we were monitoring and responding on your critical infrastructure. Those are your crown jewels. In tier 2, we offer that functionality to the endpoints that are part of your estate. The reason we've split that into tier 2 is obviously there's a licensing cost issue for MDR coverage. For you might have 10,000, you might have 15,000 endpoints. That's not an insignificant cost in terms of MDR. So that's why we split it into 2 service offerings depending on your needs. Also, as part of tier 2, we will be providing a vulnerability reporting service of a frequency yet to be determined. I'm not sure how often that will be provided, but we'll be scanning your network both externally and internally and providing you with a vulnerability report. Please note though, please be aware that's simply a vulnerability report. We will not be offering at this stage a vulnerability repair solution. We will not be providing a patching solution. Everyone's infrastructure is different. How each organization works is different. So that's why we're just going to report on it and provide an easy to understand report. And then also we will provide proactive threat hunting using the MDR that's deployed across all your endpoints to further enhance your security posture. Also, it's one thing I forgot to mention on the tier 1, this is applicable to tier 1 and tier 2. You will also get an annual CIS assessment as part of this service. Next slide, please, Paul. So here we can see the SOC, the security center, laid out slightly differently. It's more like an input and output diagram. You can see in the center there the core of our security center. We've got the SIEM, also known as CSTM. We've got the MDR solution, and we've got the automation there. And you can see the inputs in terms of logging coming in from your network on the left-hand side, and also what's going on in your directory services. That's all coming in on the left there, and also information picked up by your EDR solution. It's all being fed into the SIEM and the MDR dashboard as well. Taking threat feeds. Jasmine's already mentioned about the threat sharing both in and out from the managed firewall service. This also builds on that. Jasmine did mention the threat intelligence from STM to CSTM from the managed firewall. It's all about sharing all this intelligence across the sector and across all the products we offer in cyber. And then on the right hand side, you can see there's the outputs, our response. We identify, contain, and then we communicate with yourselves, as in what's happening, what's happened, do you need to do anything, etc. Next slide, please, Paul. So in terms of the components, I pretty much covered all this previously. One thing we want to do is, because MDR is such a critical part of this solution, We want to offer you an easy route to procurement should you not have one of the supported products in place already. You know, I know Defender is very common, so we can work with you if you already use that. However, if you don't have a supported MDR, we want to be able to offer you a one-stop shop. So as part of your security center onboarding, we want to be able to easily facilitate you purchasing the required licenses through our chest agreement service. Products, pretty much mentioned all that: CSTM, Foundation Plus, DDoS, and the annual health check there. In terms of service, dedicated service management, CISA on call, 1 hour response. That's as good as any in the industry, if not better. Next slide, please, Paul. Next one, please, Paul.
Let's go into the roadmap.
Yeah, excellent. So in terms of the roadmap, left-hand one there, CSTM live. CSTM will be officially live 2nd of January 2024. Then we move into our SOC phase 1, which will be when we launch our official proof of concept for tier 1 of our security center. In terms of that, we'll be looking for members to work with, to act as partners with us whilst we build and further design the service offering. And we'll be looking for expressions of interest across our membership, from the largest HE to the smallest research to the smallest college. We want to talk with everyone that may have an interest in this service. You know, it's all about sharing knowledge, sharing best practice, and making sure our service offering is fit for the sector. And then we move into phases 2, and then finally live by summer 2024. Next slide, please, Paul. So why choose Jisc? So we've designed this security center. This is our baby. We've built up knowledge over many years about the sector, about the products in use. We run the Janet network. We've got the threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is at the heart of all we do and the services we offer. We are NCSC assured, CCERT. And it's all around really improving your security posture. Next slide, please, Paul. And there you can see a list of our accreditations there. CREST, I believe, is quite a new one. I'm not sure. No, it wasn't. It was the CIR level 2. That's very recent, and that puts us on quite a prestigious list of cybersecurity providers. Next slide, please, Paul.
Thank you, Steve. I think we're now over to questions. So I'll just escape out of the presentation. Stop sharing that. If you could please post any questions in the chat, that would be great if anybody's got any, or we can stop recording and come off on the mute. If you'd like to put your hand up, without a doubt do come off. But if you've got any questions on any of the services, please either put them in the chat or come off mute and we'll answer those as a team. It's all quiet at the moment. I don't know if there's any last words from anybody. If anybody's got any final chance for any questions off anyone, please do come off mute. But if not, I'd just like to say a big thank you to the team for running through the services, and look forward to answering any questions. If you do have any questions that you'd like to reach out to your RMs, then please do so. We have put the link in the chat to a number of the service pages and also the blogs that have been produced recently. And I think that's it then. I can't see any further questions. So thanks ever so much, Paul.